Hey girls, it's me and Harris here to go over the notes that we talked about yesterday. So we're doing the Greek Wars recap notes, and you need to open the notes that we started yesterday that are found on the classwork tab on Google Classroom. And when you open them, they look like this. So my copy is going to be filled in, but yours looks like this screen here. So let's get started. The first thing we talked about is the Persian Wars and how they are a war that happens between Greece and Persia. They were fighting over Ionia, which was in Asia Minor, where they had Greek colonies set up. And you can see Ionia on this map below. We learned about all of the ins and outs of this war, and if you need to go back and review the Persian Wars, you have some notes on this on Google Classroom. But ultimately, the winners, even though they were the underdogs, were the Greek city-states. Some of the impacts of the Persian Wars were that the Greek city-states started to form alliances. All right, so the Delian League is formed when the Persian Wars are over as a way to protect against another enemy attacking the way that the Persians had. Remember, the Greeks are not united. They are independent individual city-states. So if they were attacked, they had to have somebody to help them in order to be able to protect themselves. So they formed something called the Delian League. It's the name of their alliance. And eventually Athens becomes really powerful. They eventually become in charge of the Delian League, and they become very powerful in Greece. And they become like an empire where they start to take over other land in Greece and put it under their control. So here is a map of that. You can see that Athens is in control, or part of their alliance is the land that is in orange. All of that land is kind of being bossed around by Athens. And then Sparta forms alliances with the areas that are in green on this map. And the areas that are in purple were neutral, meaning they did not join an alliance. So this is what it's going to look like during the next war that we're talking about here. So the Persian Wars cause the next war that you're going to put in your notes to happen. That next war is what we're seeing right here portrayed on this map. It's called the Peloponnese War. And it's when Athens, along with their allies, are fighting Sparta along with their allies. So the Athenian alliance is called the Delian League, and the Spartan alliance is called the Peloponnesian League. And the reason that they're fighting is for control over Greece. Sparta believed Athens had become way too powerful, and they really had become very powerful in this region. They were taking a lot of the money away from the Delian League and using it for their own purposes, like colonizing new places and taking over smaller city-states. And so Sparta has enough of it, and they go to war. Sparta, remember, is best at fighting on land, while Athens is best at fighting on water. So Athens, in order to avoid having to fight on land, does something kind of interesting. They build long walls around their city for protection. And here is a picture of that. So this is the city-state of Athens here. They built walls around their city, but they also had the walls come all the way down to this port area where they would dock the ships. And so when new supplies would come in through the Aegean Sea on ships, they didn't have to leave the city walls in order to come down here and get the supplies. So they were safe inside the walls, and if Sparta was out here trying to attack, they were safe inside their walls. This was suggested by a leader in Athens named Pericles, and it worked pretty well for a while until Oh, here's another picture here. Here would be this is the port where the water is. I know it's hard to tell in the black and white, but this is where the water is, where the boats would come in. This is some of just the buildings along the coast here, along the edge of the water. And then here you can see the walls coming back all the way to where to where Athens is back here. All right. So these long walls worked for a while until something bad happens. There is a plague. A plague is just any type of disease, a generic name for a disease that spreads rapidly and is deadly. So there is a plague that comes into Athens. They think it comes from some food that's brought into Athens on the ships, and 1/3 of the people in Athens dies from this illness, including Pericles and his son, who suggested the long walls be built. So this really weakens Athens, and it's sort of ironic because it wasn't even the fighting necessarily that did them in, it was that they were dying of this plague. So now Sparta kind of has the upper hand, and they do something. I called this in my last video a shady deal. They make a shady deal with the Persian Empire, who they had just fought a war with. And Sparta says, look, we need some boats. We need some ships if we're going to defeat the Athenians. And the Persians had great ships. So they say, if you give us some ships, we will give you Ionia. That land that the Persian Wars basically had been fought over, they say, we'll give you Ionia if you give us some ships. So they make that deal, and ultimately Athens is going to surrender, and the winner of the Peloponnesian War is Sparta. During all of this time of chaos, where Greece is in turmoil with each other, where they're fighting each other, there is a neighbor to the north of Greece who is getting their act together. They are called Macedonia. Sometimes you'll see it on a map called Macedon, same thing. And they are gaining strength. And you're going to watch a video after this where you learn more about Macedonia and a man named Alexander the Great. But as Greece was left weak from the Peloponnesian War, but Philip II of Macedonia was growing in power. And I can tell that my screen is not showing all of that. So I've got that fixed now where you should be able to see this. So as Greece is weak from the war, from fighting, Philip II of Macedonia was growing his empire, and eventually he's going to conquer Greece. So they've got their act together. Here's Greece here, and here's Macedonia, and they are expanding while Greece is kind of crumbling. And Philip II has a son, and his name is Alexander. And once Philip dies and Alexander becomes the next king, he creates the largest empire the world had ever seen up until that time. And his name is Alexander. He's later known as Alexander the Great. And here are some images of him. We will be learning more about Alexander the Great today. But the biggest thing that I want you all to see is the way that these wars led to these other events happening. So because the Persian War happened, it made Greece kind of antsy for power, where Sparta and Athens were fighting for control, which led to the Peloponnesian War. And because the Peloponnesian War made Greece weak with them fighting each other, this other power was able to come in and eventually conquer Greece. So that's the notes for today. Be sure that you pause the video if you need to see the full copy here, and ask any questions that you have. You can email me, or we'll talk about it on Tuesday.